My orders put me in a square hole, waist deep in black water, staring at a parapet that framed my head like a mark. All night I held still and listened to metal snap through branches while the line lit itself up in little yellow blooms. When the mortars came, they landed clean inside the place I was told would keep me alive, leaving sandbags in shreds and smoke on the air. 10 yards ahead, under moss and wet burlap, I kept my face down and my hand steady, and let the system miss me. October 14th, 1944. The sector isn't marked on civilian maps. A dense patch of evergreen and hardwood across a valley floor that hasn't seen sunlight in 6 days. The rain doesn't so much fall as seep. It drips from the canopy in a staggered rhythm, heavier than the drizzle beyond the tree line, cold enough to numb exposed skin within minutes. The mud isn't the thin slop of open fields. It's a black, clinging paste of rotting pine needles, decaying roots, and the charcoal residue of earlier artillery. In the logistics logs at battalion headquarters, 5 miles to the rear, requisition form lists standard entrenching tools, sandbags, corrugated iron sheets. Doctrine is clear: a defensive position is a hole, waist deep, reinforced with sandbags for parapet stability, with a clear field of fire stripped of obstruction. The manual, printed in 1938 and updated in 1942, specifies dimensions: a drainage sump, elbow rests. And it's a design for a war of visible lines, where men stand in earth and fire at what they can see. But here, in the ridge's shadow, the corporal isn't building a regulation position. He lies flat on his stomach, face pressed into the wet scent of humus. He isn't digging down, he's burrowing in. He pushes leaf litter aside with the flat of a gloved hand, careful not to disrupt the forest floor's chaotic pattern. He scrapes a shallow depression, no deeper than a soup bowl, for his chest. Then he works a slightly deeper channel for his right leg, splaying it out to anchor his weight. No sandbags, no corrugated iron, only the forest floor pulled over him like a heavy, damp blanket. He checks sight lines, not by looking up, but by looking through. He trims a single fern frond, not at the base, but halfway up the stem, leaving brown, withered edges to blend with the backdrop. He takes a handful of dark soil and rubs it into his canvas sleeve. They're breaking the fabric's clean manufacturing line. He's erasing himself, becoming a hummock of ground, a shadow among shadows. To the new lieutenant arriving with the replacement platoon at 0800, this isn't a defensive position. It's a grave. It's dereliction. He walks the line, boots sinking into soft earth, raincoat glistening. He sees the neat, waist-deep pits of the second squad, sandbags stacked in orderly rows, fields of fire cleared with machetes. He nods. That is a line. That is a fortification. Then he reaches the corporal's sector. There's nothing to see, trees, dripping undergrowth, uneven ground. He has to be guided to the spot. He looks down at the corporal covered in burlap scrim and loose leaves, only the rifle's muzzle visible on a mossy root. The lieutenant orders him up. The argument is brief and one-sided. The officer points out the lack of protection. A mortar shell landing 10 yards away would shred a man on the surface. He cites lack of mobility. To move, the man must rise and expose himself instantly. Dampness is a health risk. Immersion foot and pneumonia are draining the unit faster than enemy fire. This nesting, the lieutenant declares, is laziness, a refusal to do the hard work of digging in. It is banned. The corporal is ordered to dig a regulation foxhole by nightfall. The corporal stands, leaves sliding off his shoulders. He doesn't argue ballistics. He doesn't explain that a mortar shell landing 10 yards away in this forest will detonate in the canopy, sending shrapnel down into open-topped regulation foxholes, turning them into collection pans for hot steel. He doesn't explain that the second squad's sandbags are geometric anomalies in a fractal landscape, straight lines that catch any observer's eye through binoculars. He picks up his shovel. He starts to dig. By 1600, the hole is finished. Square, parapet, and exactly what the manual requires. The corporal sits in it, waist-deep in rising water seeping from saturated roots. He's safe from direct, flat trajectory fire if he stays down, but to fire he must pop up, he must break the silhouette. That night the probing begins. The enemy knows the terrain, they know the doctrine. Scouts move forward, silent in the rain's noise. They look for straight lines, they look for freshly turned parapet earth. At 0200, a flare pops overhead, casting a swinging, harsh light through branches. Shadows lengthen and rotate. In regulation holes, men freeze, helmets round and smooth, reflecting wet light. A machine gun opens from the opposing ridge. It isn't aiming at men, it's aiming at positions. It rakes sandbags. It chews the cleared fields of fire. New replacements, following orders, return fire. Their muzzle flashes bloom bright in the darkness. Distinct points of light that say, "We are here." Return fire is immediate and precise. Her mortars walk the line, detonating high in fir trees, raining jagged metal into the open pits. Screams are muffled by timber but distinct. The lieutenant, in a command post 50 yards back, calls for suppression, but there is nothing to suppress. The enemy is invisible. They aren't firing from pits, they are firing from roots. The corporal in his regulation hole doesn't fire. He crouches in water, listening to bullets snap overhead. He knows lifting his head is death. The parapet he was forced to build frames him, a target indicator. He's trapped in a box of his own making, protected by protocol, exposed to reality. Morning brings a grey, heavy harden. Stretcher bearers move low through trees, slipping on pine needles. The line has held, but the cost shows in muddy water at the bottom of Foxholes. The lieutenant walks the perimeter again, face pale, uniform less pristine. He sees shattered sandbags, splintered wood where cover was stripped away. He stops at the corporal's hole. The corporal is cleaning his rifle, stripping the bolt with methodical, muddy hands. The order stands, the lieutenant says, without meeting the corporal's eyes. Regulations exist for a reason. Discipline must be maintained. If men are allowed to lie in dirt, unit cohesion dissolves. The next 3 days are attrition. Rain turns to sleet. Temperature drops. Men in holes suffer trench foot. Water won't drain, clay subsoil holds it like a basin. They bail with helmets, ration tins, but it always returns. They shiver so hard they can't hold a sight picture. Movements turn jerky, spasmodic. The corporal makes a quiet adjustment. He doesn't disobey. He maintains the foxhole, but he doesn't stay in it. He moves 10 yards forward into the listening post zone of no man's land. He finds a depression between 2 fallen trunks, rotted and moss-covered. He doesn't dig. Then he packs the space with dryish pine boughs gathered from the canopy's underside. He lays his poncho over the boughs, then layers the forest floor back over it. He makes a cocoon. He slides in feet first. The top layer is burlap and natural foliage. When he stops moving, he's gone. Pine bough insulation traps body heat. He isn't standing in water. He's suspended above mud. He's warm. His hands are steady. From there, he watches. Enemy scouts move 200 yards away. He is staring at the foxhole line behind him, counting helmets. They don't see the corporal. He's a root, a patch of shadow. He waits. The hide isn't about cover. It's about absence. A foxhole says defense. A hide says nothing. It relies on the eye sliding over what it can't categorize. On the 5th day, the enemy launches a coordinated assault. No probing now. They push. A platoon-sized element moves through mist, confident, weapons ready, heading for gaps in the American line. Aiming to flank foxholes they've mapped. They walk past the corporal. He's 10 feet from their point man. He hears breathing, leather webbing creak, the soft squelch of boots in mud. He doesn't move. He doesn't breathe. He holds air in his lungs, heart rate forced down by years of hunting, by disciplined stillness. If he were in a foxhole, he would have been seen. He would have been grenades, but he's part of the floor. The point man looks at the moss covering the corporal's scope and sees only moss. The squad advances, grouping up to rush the main line. Now they're between the corporal and the lieutenant's position, backs to the corporal focused on sandbags and the defence's visible geometry. The corporal eases the safety off. The click disappears into the wind in branches. He doesn't fire rapidly. Rapid fire makes a signature. He fires once. The trailing man drops. The others spin, weapons raised. They're scanning trees. They see nothing. No muzzle flash. The flash is buried in deep shadow, absorbed by wet wood and burlap. No silhouette. No head popping up, no shoulders against sky. They assume the shot came from the flank, from the main line. They turn back and open fire on the foxholes. The corporal cycles the bolt. He waits for their machine gun's thunder to mask his next shot. He fires again. The machine gunner collapses. Panic sets in. They're taking fire from a ghost. They can't locate it. They're exposed upright while their target is effectively underground. They spray bushes, treetops, they throw grenades at probable positions. Grenades explode harmlessly against trunks. The corporal picks them apart. He isn't fighting a duel. He's conducting an execution. He shoots for legs, center mass. He shifts aim with agonizing slowness. Moving the barrel inches, keeping camouflage disturbance microscopic, the assault falters. Casualties come from an angle that makes no sense. Their momentum breaks. They pull back, dragging wounded. throwing smoke to cover retreat. Smoke drifts through trees mixing with mist. The corporal stays in the hide. No cheering, no movement. He knows they'll shell the area once clear. He waits for the barrage. When mortars fall again, they pound where the enemy thought the fire came from. They pound the foxhole line, the obvious ridges. The corporal, flat between massive rotting trunks, feels the ground shake. Debris rains down. And a branch shears off overhead and crashes into mud 3 feet away. He closes his eyes and waits. An hour later, silence returns. The lieutenant crawls out of his command post. Poor. The line is battered, but it held. The enemy failed to breach. The lieutenant checks casualties, counting heads. He reaches the corporal's foxhole. It's empty. A mortar shell has landed directly inside, blowing sandbags apart and turning the pit into a crater of black water. If the corporal had been there, and he would be vapour. The lieutenant looks around, panic rising. "Report!" he calls. 10 yards ahead, a patch of moss shifts. A calm, flat voice speaks from the earth. "Clear," the corporal says. The lieutenant jumps, staring at the ground. Slowly, the corporal peels back the hide's top layer. He sits up, shakes pine needles from his cap. He is dry. He is alive. His rifle smokes slightly in the cold air. The lieutenant looks at the destroyed foxhole, then at the corporal, and then at dead enemy soldiers in the kill zone shot from behind. For a long moment, regulations hang in the air between the crater's reality and the survivor's reality. The lieutenant is a man of the book, but not a fool. He sees the ambush geometry, the impossibility of the survival. "Stay put," he says, voice hoarse. "Yes, sir," the corporal replies. He lies back down and pulls the forest over himself again. That evening, no official order rescinds the ban. No memo corrects the manual. The regiment bureaucracy doesn't pivot on one squad in a nameless sector, but enforcement stops. At dusk, the lieutenant walks the line. He sees second squad filling in foxholes. Not completely, just shallowing them. They drag logs over tops. They scavenge burlap from supply crates. They rub mud on faces. He stops at a young private frantically weaving twigs into a helmet net. The private freezes, expecting a reprimand. The lieutenant looks at the messy pile of brush. "Let's make it lower," he says quietly. "And cover your scope." He moves on. By week's end, the sector has changed. Straight lines are gone. Sandbags have been cut open, sand spread to mimic natural contours of the ridge. The unit has disappeared. To a casual observer, the forest is empty. The corporal moves from hide to hide, checking work. He teaches how to cut vegetation so it won't wilt and change colour too fast. And he teaches how to build a drainage channel under the body so water flows away from skin. He teaches the discipline of the bottle, how to urinate without moving, without smell, without sound. It's miserable work. It demands a stillness unnatural to young men full of adrenaline, a submission to the environment. You don't conquer the forest, you let it swallow you. You become the dirt. November brings snow. The game changes again. Hides must be white. They use bed sheets. The scavenged tablecloths from a bombed-out farmhouse, rolls of medical gauze. The corporal shows how to dirty the cloth so it isn't too white, so it matches the grey slush quality of thaw. The enemy returns in force in December. The Battle of the Bulge begins to ripple through the lines. Armour moves. Forests churn with diesel and steel. The regiment is hit by a mechanised infantry unit. Half-tracks and light tanks push through fire breaks. They expect a resistance line they can crush with high explosives, foxholes they can drive over. They find a haunted forest. The lead tank stops, commander scanning for targets. He sees nothing. Then infantry supporting the tank begin to drop. No heavy machine gun roar, just singular rifle cracks from nowhere. The tank traverses its turret, gears whining. It fires a high explosive round into a clump of bushes. Dirt flies, but fire comes from the roots of the tree beside the tank. And a Molotov cocktail thrown from a hide virtually under the treads shatters on the engine deck. The tank slews sideways, burning. Enemy infantry panic. They spray the ground. They are fighting the earth itself. Every shadow is a potential muzzle. Every pile of leaves is a threat. The psychological weight of an invisible enemy breaks cohesion. They can't close with defenders because they can't find them. The attack stalls. The regiment holds the sector against superior numbers for 3 days. The cost is high but not total. Casualty rates in modified hides are significantly lower than in standard pits of the neighbouring unit, which is overrun in the first hour. On the fourth day, the corporal is wounded, not by enemy fire, but by cold. Frostbite in his toes has turned gangrenous. He's pulled off the line, carried out on a stretcher kept low to the ground. As he's moved to the rear, he passes the command post. The lieutenant is on the radio calling coordinates. He sees the corporal, sets the handset down for a second and nods, barely a dip of the chin. The corporal nods back. The corporal is evacuated to a field hospital in Belgium, then to a recovery ward in England. He never returns to the forest. At the front, snow keeps falling. The unit rotates out, replaced by fresh troops from the States. A new captain arrives with a clipboard. He walks the line, sees shallow depressions, logs, lack of sandbags. He sees men lying in snow covered in sheets. What is this mess? The captain demands. Get these men digging. I want regulation fighting positions by 1800. Standard depth, sandbags interlocked. The lieutenant, now a captain by attrition, steps forward. He looks at the fresh officer, then at the forest, silent, heavy, watching. With respect, sir, he says, we don't dig here, we burrow. The new captain bristles. He cites the manual, the safety regulations, threatens a report. The lieutenant hands him binoculars. Look at the tree line opposite us, he says. Tell me what you see. The new captain looks. Nothing, he says. Just trees. Exactly, the lieutenant says. There are 200 Germans in that timber. They're digging regulation holes. We can't see them yet, but we will when they finish, and then we will kill them. He lowers the binoculars. My men are already invisible, sir. If you make them dig, you make them dead. The argument goes up the chain and is never officially resolved. The manual is never rewritten, but the order to dig is quietly suspended for the sector. The forest floor hide becomes oral tradition, passed from veteran to replacement in whispers and demonstrations, a technique born of failure, perfected in misery, sustained by survival's simple binary. The war moves on. Lines shift. Spring thaw reveals the forest's scars. Shallow graves of hides wash out, leaving indentations like natural erosion. Timber regrows, roots reclaim space in archives. The reports mention stiff resistance and effective use of terrain. They don't mention the corporal or the specific architecture of leaf litter nests. History books focus on generals, tank battles, sweeping arrows on maps, but in the memory of men who lay in freezing mud, listening to enemy boots pass by their heads, the lesson remains. The weapon wasn't the M1 Garand, it wasn't the grenade. It was the ability to become nothing, to suffer cold, wet fear, and hold it inside a space no bigger than a coffin until the trigger broke. The forest remembers. If you walk that ground today, trees are tall and straight. Logging roads are paved. But step off the path into deep shade where sun rarely touches, and you can still find them. Shallow oblong depressions lined with decomposed timber remnants. Not quite nature, not quite architecture. Ghosts of the hides. Places where men vanished to survive and in doing so, and turned passive landscape into an active participant in war. The ban was never lifted, but the forest didn't care. It accepted the men willing to become part of it.